I want to give you a brief word here about dates and the dating system that we use in Western culture. Now, I know that most of you understand the basic system, and so I'm trying to give you some things here that I think everybody will learn something from. I know most of you understand the basic system, but I've learned over my 31 years of college teaching. Good grief. Holy cow, 31 years. Wow. Well, I've learned some things. And, one thing I've learned is that in any group of 10 or 9 well-educated people, there's always somebody who doesn't quite get the system. And that's okay. There's plenty of things that I don't get, all right? It's not an IQ test. It's just that they just never quite got it, okay? And so I want to give a brief overview of the system. I know that most of you already get it. Some of you probably have some areas where you don't quite get it. And I think everybody might learn at least one thing from this, okay? So it's going to be brief. We're going to work through the system. The basic system of dating that we use in Western culture was developed by a man named Bede. After his death, he was called the Venerable Bede. It means honorable or worthy of respect, Venerable Bede. He wrote the first book of English history, the ecclesiastical history of the English people. It focuses on the history of the church in England, but it's the first book that addresses the history of England. But in that book, he tried to come up with a consistent method of dating, okay? Before Bede, different people groups had different dating systems. Every little kingdom, and there were 7 kingdoms in England at one point that Bede is writing about, had a different style of keeping dates. And so Bede tried to come up with one standard by which all those different systems could be set into one basic structural lineal system. And he chose as his starting point the birth of Jesus. So everything that happened before the birth of Jesus, he gave the date BC, which in English means before Christ. And everything that happened after the birth of Jesus, he gave the name Anno Domini, or AD. Anno Domini is Latin. It means in the year of our Lord, and that refers to things that happened after the birth of Jesus. I stress that because I've had students who thought that BC meant before the crucifixion. They got the Jesus part. They thought that BC meant before the crucifixion, and AD meant after death, meaning after the crucifixion. Well, at least they got the Jesus part right, okay? But that would set off by roughly 33 years the dates in the first, 2nd century that might be significant and important. And so, just to clarify that, we're talking, when we use BC and AD, we're talking about the year of the birth of Jesus. Now, it's important to note that until the last, just to pull a number out of the air, 500 years, okay? Dates are pretty rough. That's why you'll almost always in this course, certainly in this course in World History 1, hear me refer to roughly the year this, roughly the year. The Venerable Bede is born in roughly the year 673, because lining up the years is a very tricky process. That's because different people group have different systems. One might write something happened in the 12th year of King Alfred, and someone else might write in the 14th year after the reign of King Charles. And they're referring to the same event, and so from that event you take the 12th year of King Alfred, the 14th year after the death of King Charles, and you have all these dates related to events in different systems, and you try to work them together, but you're working basically off of a whole year span time. And so as you add all these years together, there can be variations. The best guess, for example, for when Jesus of Nazareth was born today is roughly 6 BC. We think we've gotten the time periods worked out a little bit better than Bede did, so we're talking about very rough years when we do talk about these years. Certainly until roughly, let's just say 500 years ago as a starting point. Now the styling of the year, if we look at what these abbreviations mean, it will make sense immediately to us. Take the date 1177 BC. We have 1177 before Christ, all right? That's 1,177 years before the birth of Jesus. But if we're talking about after the birth of Jesus, we say in the year of our Lord, and so we put the AD before the year, AD 476. 1177 BC is the ironic use of a date in the title of a book you're going to be learning about. Eric Klein's 1177 BC, the year civilization collapsed. That's an ironic title. You'll be learning why that's the case. AD 476 is roughly the year that we ascribe to the fall of the Roman Empire. But just two examples here on how you use the the style of BC and AD. BC comes after the year, AD comes before the year. Now you may have come across a different set of datings which uses the same number, BCE and CE. Both of these follow the years. BCE in English stands before the Common Era, and CE stands for the Common Era. This was a system developed in the 1960s as a way to not center history on Jesus. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Well, actually, it does make an awful lot of sense to me. I don't like using it as a dating system in dealing with history. The Common Era confuses me. They'll say that's when everybody was sharing information and communicating, and it doesn't make any sense at all to me. It's supposed to be inclusive, but it excludes, say, the Australian Aborigines who weren't sharing information in 12 CE. It excludes Polynesians, it excludes Native Americans, and it excludes Sub-Saharan Africans. So it's a very exclusive to say it's common when we're only talking about part of the world's surface. I am, as a Christian, I'm very happy to make a theological argument that the birth of Jesus brought about a commonality of humanity. This, of course, isn't the place for that kind of an argument, but in a different context, I'd be very happy to say that Jesus provides a commonality to the human race, that the birth of Jesus gives all human beings something in common. But that's a theological argument, and I don't think that's the way that these, I call it the baby boomer system of dating. It strikes me as being ugly and awkward, and I hope it dies out, although I doubt that it will. But you will see this. You should know what it means. It just means BC and AD to people who don't want to say BC and AD. That's what it means. Otherwise, it's well, I think you've caught my antagonism towards the system. And part of that antagonism is that, as you may know, people in different parts of the world use different dating systems. In the Muslim world, they start counting years from the Hijra. You'll be learning what that is. In China, they use a different system of counting years. In Japan, they use a different system of counting years. And I think to hold this Western system up as common kind of defeats the purpose of whatever the reasoning was before coming up with this system. Now, understanding how centuries are counted, I will admit I get messed up every once in a while on this as well. Let me turn on my pointer here, so you know things are going to get awkward. Here we go. Right here, the first year of Jesus' birth would be AD 1. The year before Jesus' birth would be 1 BC. So the first 100 years after the birth of Jesus would be the first century, although the dates would start with 0. Actually, since they start with 0, we wouldn't be counting them, okay? Roughly the year of Jesus' crucifixion would be be patient, D33, and that would be in the first century, because the first 100 years would start with 0, or not be given, right? You're familiar, of course, that although we're in the 20s in our years, that we are in the 21st century. The American Revolution, American independence was declared in 1776, so the American Revolution took place in the 18th century. On the AD side, we add the number to the century from the date. Does that make sense to you? If something it was in 1776, then that's in the 18th century. Occasionally, you'll hear me mess it up because I'll see that 17 and go with 17th century. I myself know better. Trust me, I know better, but I mess up. If you mess up, don't get worked up over it. Just on exams and things like that, be very careful to figure out, which century we're talking about, relating that to dates, okay? The traditional date for the fall of Rome is AD 476, and so the fall of Rome takes place in the 5th century. If you want to work through this chart, because I've dealt with how many students, and there are some students who struggle with this. I struggle with some stuff myself, okay? So it's not an IQ test. I've put up a more detailed explanation, and if you need that, then you'll find it on the Canvas page.